On this great day of rejoicing, we express our paternal felicitation to all African Catholics on the elevation to altar of these young martyrs of the modern era. May their example and their intercession in heaven obtain for the faithful of Africa abundant graces of perseverance, strength, and generosity in the faith. Pray to them, invoke their protection upon your beloved country, and ask for the great gift of faith for all your fellow Africans. In pledge of divine assistance, through the intercession of these new saints, we lovingly impart to all of you here present, to your families and loved ones in Africa, particularly your children, our apostolic blessing.
On Mission Sunday, October 18, 1964, 22 Catholic martyrs of Uganda were proclaimed saints by Pope Paul VI at St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. They were the first black saints of modern times and the first ever black saints from sub-Saharan Africa. Their canonization was the outgrowth of wide-ranging changes in the Church. In 1960, most French African countries celebrated their independence, and the Vatican made haste to consecrate Africans to lead dioceses in black-run countries. In 1962, the Pope opened the Second Vatican Council, setting in motion a 4-year-long event that would see the Church open its doors to the world. The African bishops were to play a central role in Vatican II, pushing the Church toward a more liberal and more open view of other religious and cultural traditions. So it was that on the 18th of October, African drums resounded for the first time ever in St. Peter's Basilica, and for the first time in history, an African choir sang in an African language at the center of Catholic Christianity. That choir was made up largely of Ugandan students, directed by the great Ugandan musician Joseph Changambidwa. It was he who composed the Uganda Martyrs Oratorio, which can be heard here.
Suspicari potuit, ut exemplum afferamus, ad acta illa animos commoventia, martyrum Scillitanorum, martyrum Carthaginiensium, martyrum masse candide uticensis, de quibus Sanctus Augustinus et Prudentius commemorant, martyrum Egypti, vorum amplissimam laudem apud Ioannem Chrysostum scriptam invenimus, martyrum persecutionis vandalice, nostris temporibus novas historias accessuras esse, quibus res non minus fortiter geste, res non minus fulgide narrarentur. Quis animo presentire potuit fore, precelsis sanctis martiribus et confessoribus africanis, rerum memoria notis, veluti Cipriano, felicitati et perpetue, et Augustino viro summo, quondam aggregaremus odie Carolum Lwanga, Matthiam Mulumba Kalemba, que nomina cara nobis sunt, e orunque viginti socios. In menzione dignis untali etiam, qui Anglicana Instituta Religiora Profitentes, pro Christi nomine, morte affecti sunt. I profecto martires africani nostre et nove etatis initia ponunt. Homens non ad persecutiones et conflictationes religiosas convertatur, sed ad regenerationem Christianam et civilem. Africa enim sanguineorum martyrum irrorata, qui primi sunt nove uius etatis, et utinam Deo volente postremi, cum holocaustum eorum tantum sit tantumque pretiosum, Africa libera et sui iuris facta renascitur.
In July 1969, Paul VI made a pilgrimage to Uganda. It was the first time that any Catholic pontiff had visited the African continent. He ordained 12 bishops at a mass in Kololo, addressed Uganda's parliament, and consecrated the newly built shrine to the Uganda Martyrs in Namugongo. There were 100,000 people in the congregation that day. The Pope called the martyrs our champions, our heroes, our teachers. They teach us how real Christians should be.
Hours before the Pope's arrival, crowds had gathered at Entebbe Airport. In the customary manner, the people of Uganda prepared to greet the pontiff. This was the first time that a reigning pontiff would set foot on African soil. For the nation, and especially for its 3 million Roman Catholics, the arrival of the Pope by VC-10 was the biggest event since independence from Britain 7 years ago. For all the happy cheers of his welcome, the Pope was in Africa on serious business. Uppermost in his mind was the bitter 2-year civil war between Nigeria and Biafra. But President Milton Obote and 4 other African heads of state who greeted him did so as hosts to the pontiff, whose visit had first been planned in order that he might dedicate a shrine to 22 African martyrs. And so, in an open Lincoln Continental, Pope Paul VI began his historic journey into Africa. The Pope arrived at Kololo Terrace, a holy place on a hill overlooking Kampala. There, he and 50 other bishops and cardinals were to celebrate an all-African Mass at the vast 5,000 square foot altar to mark the consecration of 12 black bishops. It was a moving and meaningful service within a faith that in Africa is changing, seeking to break its identification with the colonial past and find its place within the emerging nations. In Africa, the Roman Church is growing fast. Estimates number its adherents as between 30 and 40 millions, by far the largest Christian body in Africa. The Pope's grueling schedule continued. Wherever he went, there were crowds to cheer his progress. From the Kololo Terrace, Pope Paul drove in sweltering heat down into Kampala, where a special session of Parliament, attended by 5 African presidents, those of Uganda, Zambia, Tanzania, Rwanda and Burundi, plus heads of diplomatic missions and parliamentarians. President Obote told the session that the papal pilgrimage to Africa had widened the horizon of human relationship. The Pope, speaking, he said, as a simple man, believed that today's conflicts between peoples could be resolved in better and more certain ways than through violence. The following day, at the partially built shrine of the Roman Catholic martyrs, 100,000 people had gathered for the Mass of dedication. Twice during his brief stay, the Pope had met with Nigerian and Biafran representatives in a vain attempt to mediate the conflict. The troubled soil of the African continent received the papal blessing, but the mission of peace was unfulfilled.
Today, the sacrifice of those young men in Namugongo remains a source of inspiration for faithful people. Here, Joseph Mukasa Balikuddembe Sendaji describes the martyrdom of Saint Balikuddembe. Mukasa is the Omosika, that is the heir of the saint, chosen by him in 1980 in a dream.
Naye badejala kujiyayo Balikuddembe biki ebyamufuula ow'ettutumu ki bitwagala okumuyigirako. Ekirala nga kye kikulu ekyamuviirako n'okufa kye kya Bishop Hannington. Bishop Hannington bw'atuuka yayita mu East. Ate nga Daudi Chwa mu ddaama eri yali agambye nti alirya Obuganda, alitta Obuganda alivaawa mu East. Mu Buganda, Eastern ebusoga manju. Naawe wennyini omuntu bw'akuyita manju aba akoze bubi. Kabaka n'alagira bagende batte Bishop Hannington kubanga yayiseewa ate muzungu ate nga kitaawe yali yamwogerako mu ddaame. nti aliba muzungu ate alivaawa mu Eastern. Kati Mwanga bwalagira bagende batta omuzungu Bishop Hannington, Balikuddembe n'amugamba nti ayi Ssaabasajja tutta muzungu, muleke atuuke omubuuze ekimuleese, tomutta. Kabaka n'agamba Balikuddembe, oba osobola okudduka okusinga embwa zange, kale genda okole ki omutaasa. Balikuddembe n'adduka nga bw'asobola, yabasanga mu kkubo nga bakomawo nga bavulubanya omusaayi, bonna bakomba biso, bamaze okukola ki okumutta. Balikuddembe n'alumba kabaka nga tamutidde era nze awe mutendera, n'amugamba Ssaabasajja okoze ensobi, bajjajjawo kye bataakola gwe okikoze, okutta omuzungu osse waaki. Katabambejja ne Katikkiro Mukasa yaliwo ku budde obwo ne bagamba nti olabye kabaka mu kamwa. Ne bagamba kabaka oyo aveewo, olaba otya kabaka mu kamwa. Era kabaka we yalagira Balikuddembe bagenda bakole ki bamutte. Naye olwokuba yali mukwano gwe ng'amwagala nnyo, Katikkiro n'apapa bamutte mangu kubanga kabaka ayinza okwekyusa. Era olwamutuuse Nakivubo ne bamutemako omutwe, kabaka agenda okwekyusa nti Balikuddembe bamuleke, basanga naye bamaze okukola ki. Naye Balikuddembe yayogera ebigambo bino bye njagala tuwulire nti nga tebanaaba musala kumutta, yagamba abaamutta nti mugende mugambe kabaka yeenenye, bw'ateenenya tujja gasimbagana ffenna mu ggulu. Kati bagamba kabaka ekintu ekyo ne kimutiisa, n'agamba Balikuddembe, nze okusimbagana naye mu maaso ga Katonda kambuzeebuze obujulizi, kwe kusalawo batte akaana kali, evvuba lyokye bakookye, evvuba ligattegatte neya Balikuddembe, alabe Balikuddembe gy'aliva bagasimbagane. Ekyo kyafaayo nakyo weekiri. Balikuddembe n'attibwa bati. Balikuddembe tebaagala mulumya, bamusalako omutwe, then ne bamwokya e Nakivubo ng'ennaku z'omwezi 15 1886 85 kuba ye mujulizi omubereberye.
Levocato Kalema was born in Budu County in Chotara district. He was born paralyzed, unable to walk. His mother passed away during his delivery, and his father died shortly after his birth. In June 1961, the clergy of Bigada Parish organized a novena to pray for his healing. He was then 4 years old. Here he describes that life-changing occasion.
Novena bagisomera ennaku novena ebeera ya nnaku 9 naye nga buli lweziwera saa 6 ogw'omutundu bagenda ne basindika omwana n'anzijayo mu ekereziya kuba baalekanga banzazise mu ekereziya okwali ebisigala by'abajulizi. Kaakati omwana najja nanona.
Waaliwo bisigala oba kyali kifaananyi?
Bo bagamba waaliwo ebisigala by'abajulizi. Kaakati n'omwana nannona n'antwala. Kaakati bw'antwala olunaku olwasooka ne bankomyawo enkeera bwe bityo luti kweganga buli saa 6 bangoberera okuntwala okufuna ebyokulya ate n'okunnongoosa. Kaakati novena etambudde ennaku 6. Etandise nga 6 olunaku olw'e14 yatandika nga 9. Olw'e14 we bataali essaawa ezo era ez'omukaaga n'ekintu omwana agenda okujja okungoberera yasanga omugogwe waabwe gwe baleka bazazise yatandise dde okwavula ng'ali ku madaala g'ekereziya. Kaakati baleka bamuzazise talina kiyeegasa basitula musitule naye kati ku ssaawa eno amusanze ku madaala g'ekereziya era bwe yatuuka n'alaba kyalaba yanyamaalirira era n'asoberwa naga nti omuntu ono bwe tusitula obusituzi ate atuusa atya wano. Kakati mu kwetegereza agenda okulaba nga njavula ngenda gy'ali. Naga nti bwe tutaabadde kye tubadde tusaba twakifunye dda. N'akuba enduulu n'adduka n'addayo n'ategeeza abasisita, basisita ne bo ne bajja ne beerolera. Ekigo ne kikwata omuliro. Bafaada ne bavaayo, kaakati ne bansitula ne bantwala mu nnyumba ya bannabiikira okufuna ekyemisana. Ziba ziwera ssaawa 10 n'ekintu omuntu eyali atandiikirizza okwavula bagenda okulaba nga nsituka nga ntandika okuyimirira nga ntandika genda nga ntambula nkutte ku kisenge mpolampola kwega ebigere sisitimu eggudde era etandise okukola nentandika okutambula zigenda okwera ssaawa 11 ng'omuntu abadde atambula obutambuzi abatiza obubatiza misinde yatandise okukola ki ekifo ne kikwata omuliro ne bakakasa nti kye bafunye ne kye balabyeko kyebabadde basaba bakifunye mu bujjuvu.
Reverend Father Joseph Mukasa Mbubonge is promoter of the devotion of the Uganda Martyrs in the Archdiocese of Kampala.
We have to do much more. Yes, we would have loved the Uganda Martyrs more than we do. So much still has to be done. Many people, I don't fear to mention this, still do not know what concerns the Uganda Martyrs, apart from mentioning the words Uganda Martyrs, Uganda Martyrs. But if you asked one to say something about James Buzabaliao, one will look around and feel a bit embarrassed. So we have to know the lives of the Uganda Martyrs, but not only to know, but to emulate. But one needs to know that as for politicians, the Peterson, Joseph Mukasa Balikuddembe, leaders of the kind, okay? One has to know the Matthias Mulumba is concerned with married couples. Andrew Kagwa, teachers and catechists. James Sibuza Baliawo with matters pertaining to, say, trade, say money. Like Athanasius Bazeketa, also finances. So if we knew that, possibly we would have loved the Uganda Martyrs much more. But much is still to be done.
So what does that do to the people? That's the story of the martyrdom. What do you think has done to the people of Uganda?
Well, it should be an inspiration and provocation to follow in their footsteps. But of course, in modern times introduce a complex situation where economic factors may be pushing people much more to a side where it is not consistent with the religious teaching and with the idea of following in the footsteps of the martyr. But generally, if you witness, I used to go to Nkozi at the time when I was still dean, and on the days preceding the pilgrimage, you would see people walking all the way from Kabale on foot, even mothers with babies. It was incredible. We were spending days walking all the distances, and some come from Gulu. The same story goes on, and they make it to Namgongo. And this is an example of what the general public, what their feeling about the martyrs is definitely dedicated to them. Yeah.
Sister, brother, keep trusting the Uganda Martyrs. Be confident they cannot let down any of us. Yes, they still love to do something for us. As God wills.
Salaba. Mulinnya lya Taata n'erya Mwana ne Mwoyo Mutuukirivu. Mugende musomesa amawanga gonna, amawanga gonna. Mugende musomesa amawanga gonna, amawanga gonna. Nga mubatiza abantu nga balokoka, abantu nga balokoka. Nga mubatiza abantu nga balokoka, abantu nga balokoka. Mubuulira abatonde evvanjiri eno ey'eddembe, evvanjiri eno ey'eddembe. Mubuulira abatonde evvanjiri eno ey'eddembe, evvanjiri eno ey'eddembe. Ngenda nsiibula nti okudda gye nava, ngenda edda mulindaba ewa ssebo. Ngenda nsiibula nti okudda gye nava, ngenda edda mulindaba ewa ssebo.
Sitese Karoli wali Nagera Karoli wali Sitese Karoli wali